Hi, happy September, everybody. Glad to kick off our academic year by welcoming all of you to today's Aluminar. Today, we're going to feature some career advice for alumni with our very own John Paganelli and Laurent Troland. And for those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Alexis Conley, and I am the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations and class of 99 and MBA 2014, so also a proud double bear. And I'm currently working very hard to plan homecoming weekend for you guys to welcome everybody back. So we hope to see you on October 23rd here on campus in person, homecoming this year. So I just want to begin with a little bit of housekeeping. First and foremost, this session will be recorded, which is great because if it goes over our allotted time, everybody can know if they need to jump off that the session is being recorded and they can go back and view it at any time. We ask all attendees to please stay on mute and keep your video off as to not distract away from the presentation. In your top right corner, you will see the view button. There are different views that you can choose, but the view that we suggest is the speaker view for optimal viewing. And also, you can feel free to type in questions at any time throughout the presentation using the chat bar in the middle of your bottom toolbar. We will collect all the questions and then ask them at the end. Like I said, if the program runs longer, we will be recording, so we will make sure that all the questions get asked and answered in the question and answer period at the end of the presentation. First, I would like to introduce everybody to my wonderful co-host, Rob Bradley. And Rob Bradley is the research manager at the Deloitte Center for Financial Services, specializing in banking and capital markets research. This is a new position for Rob, so we're congratulating him as well. Prior to joining Deloitte, Rob led research teams at State Street Corporation, primarily focused on investor behavior, macroeconomic analysis, and asset allocation, as well as operations and business analytics, and was a founding member of the BSU employee network at State Street, which we are going to miss, but we're going to get some more State Street alum to join us on that network. Rob is also a faculty member at Boston College, where he teaches graduate courses on predictive analytics, communication, and leadership. Rob earned his bachelor's degree in economics from BSU, class of 2012, as well as a master's in applied economics, class of 2014, and a PhD in applied economics, class of 2020 from Northeastern University. Rob lives in Plymouth with his wife and 3 sons. Please take it away, Dr. Rob.
Thank you, Alexis. And yes, today's topic could not be more timely. I've just gone through the entire recruiting experience, and this is a session I could have used, I think, ahead of that. So I'm really excited for our talk today. So we have 2 guests, John Paganelli and Laurent Troland, have built a career services department that effectively and successfully brings graduates and employers together and offers a full range of services, resources, and programs. John Paganelli is executive director of the group and has been in career services at BSU for 20 years. In fact, he just celebrated his work anniversary in May of this year. So congrats, John. John's primary function is to help lead his staff and provide students with professional services, resources, and events. He also manages the operations of the office along with the office manager. Together, they service all current students, graduate students, and alumni with their own career services brand, student to professional. For current students, John and his team help each graduate as they transition from a college student to a professional employee. His greatest joy is connecting students with alumni and employers out in the global community. Laurent Troland serves as assistant director and has worked in BSU career services for over 14 years. In addition to meeting with students and alumni and counseling appointments, he manages the employer services functions of the office, which includes career fairs, networking events, managing BSU's handshake recruitment platform, and finding ways to connect employers with BSU candidates. Laurent currently serves on the board of the Eastern Association of Colleges and Employers, the Regional Professional Association, as the Director of Professional Development. He takes great pride in the role BSU Career Services gets to play when helping students decide what they want to do and then helping to guide them on the path to becoming a successful professional after graduation. As BSU alums, John, Laurent, and the entire team of career counselors stand ready to discuss your career path, review resumes and cover letters, as well as discuss your job search at any point in your life. Please welcome Laurent and John. Take it away, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now let me just share my screen. Hang on one second.
Great.
All right, did it come up, John?
Yes, it did. Thanks.
Okay,
Looks
all
like it.
right.
So before we look at the slides, I just want to thank the following folks. I want to thank Ellen and Dan and Alexis and Rob and Kelly and Colleen. And I want to thank Laurent for co-presenting with me. So thank you all. This is a brief overview of the services that we provide to alumni. And this is just the top tips that we have received in conversations that we've had with employers and our recruiter friends. So each of these topics could actually run its own presentation. So we are going to talk about resumes, cover letters, interviewing, networking, LinkedIn, and the job search. Okay. So anyway, so to begin with, as far as services to alumni, you can certainly, all of you, make a one-on-one appointment with our office. You can call the office. If you're out of state, we can make a virtual appointment with you if you'd like. If you're local and want to come in to an in-person appointment, that is fine as well. And you can speak with Denise about scheduling either appointment. We do critique resumes and cover letters all the time. We set up career counseling appointments, even for alumni that might be wanting to change careers. Sorry about my dog. Networking, LinkedIn appointments, interviewing preparation. We do mock interviews, and we talk about job search strategies. Our newest recruiting software platform is called Handshake. So all of our current students have an account that has been set up for them. And for any alumni that need to set up an account, we can help you with that, but that is our current platform. So my recommendation is that Handshake is a great tool for looking for employment, as well as Indeed and the other types of platforms. Every year we host 5 career fairs. So we have 4 coming up this semester. One on September 23rd, which is our accounting, finance, and business virtual fair. So they're all virtual for the fall. And then we have our big fair in April of 22. So any of you are welcome to participate in any of the 5 fairs. And it's all done through Handshake. Attendance at workshops and our alumni career panels, anybody can join any of those off of our website. So feel free. And that's also on Handshake. So moving along to tips for resumes. So we recommend that you simply type your resume as a Word document and then simply change it as a PDF before you upload it to any employer. We avoid templates because of the restrictions and the boundaries that they have. So we're not big proponents about templates. So if you could do it in Word, that would be best. Resumes are usually 1-pagers for upcoming college graduates. If you've been out 5 years, 10 years, you might have a 2-page resume, but 2 pages is the max, unless you're a faculty member who will, normally have a CV. CVs can be 4 pages to 115 pages. But where today's discussion is, looking at resumes. So you should customize each position when you're applying for jobs in the community. Match employers' needs to your skills and accomplishments. So when you do have a list of what you have done at a current job or a previous job, you also want to highlight what have you accomplished within that position at that particular company or organization. So accomplishments is a good subheader to incorporate into your resume. You're always going to write your resume with action statements, so you cannot speak in the first person. So the 3 words I, me, my do not exist on your resume. So you're always starting with the verb, either in the present tense or in the past tense. Whenever you can quantify or qualify on your resume, that is very helpful to employers. Employers would rather see that you have hired and trained 20 to 25 employees versus just saying hired many employees and train them. So when you can quantify, it's helpful. As I mentioned, highlighting your accomplishments, not just your duties. Keep your font style simple. The normal point size for your resume is 11 or 12. Your headers are normally a 12 or 14. Those are bolded. Your name is bolded. Your name is the biggest on the document, so it can be 14, 16, or 18 bold, but the entire text is 11 or 12. And then be sure to have your document critiqued by our office, or have someone with a different set of eyes take a look at your document, because maybe you've looked at your document too many times and you don't see the typos or the grammatical mistakes, but somebody could look at it with a fresh set of eyes and find a glaring typo and immediately, highlight that to you. So have Career Services critique your resume. We're happy to do it. It's free. And we do it for alums, current students, grad students, you name it. So here's a sample resume. And you'll notice that most resumes are usually a little bit left heavy because you're starting left justified. So one of the things that I do like to suggest to students and alumni is that if you look at the headers that are presented on this particular sample, education, related experience, military experience, additional experience, skills, you may want to play around with where those headers appear, because they can either be left justified or centered. So although your name is left justified, you could highlight each of those headers and make them centered. And it may be easier to read your document. It brings a little bit more balance to the middle of your document if you move the headers. So I just wanted to show you that visual. All of the dates are to the right. So keep all the dates right justified. This particular candidate bolded all of their educational institutions. You have to include city and state with a comma. All of the employers are bolded. Dates don't have to be bolded and so forth. But one thing that I do want to bring your attention to in this COVID environment and this pandemic is that we are all using different virtual platforms, whether it be Zoom, Teams, Skype, WebEx. So at the bottom, our employer partners are now asking us to include several subheaders under skills. So you can have language skills, computer skills, social media skills, and now the new fourth one is virtual platform skills. So those can be either italicized or bolded with a colon. And for virtual platforms, you could either qualify your usage of Zoom in Teams and WebEx. So you can say that you're proficient in using Zoom, somewhat familiar with Teams. And if you don't know WebEx, don't list it. But if you're proficient with all three, just simply say virtual platform skills and Zoom, Teams, and WebEx. Okay. So that's the newest addition under skills if you want to separate with subheaders. You'll notice that the bullets, don't over bullet your resume. The bullets are usually reserved for what you have done at a particular organization with the title that you hold. The New England Aquarium is this person's current job. So when you look at the bullet, think of the bullet as the word I, and then it has to start with that action verb. So I assist media relations director. I create content and contests. I maintain media and job books. I draft, I write, I help, I participate. So it's all in the present tense. Formerly, this person was a team member in the market research project at Bridgewater State University back in 2016. everything is past tense. So the bullet can be read as I worked in a team of 4. I utilized secondary data analysis. I gathered results and created a proposal. And then with the military police officer position, which is current, I direct 5 personnel and I develop communication and report writing skills. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that. I think we're good with that. And now cover letters. Cover letters are always just 1 page. So your resume can be a page and a quarter, a page and a half, a page and 3/4, 2 pages full, but that's it. But cover letters only 1 page. And cover letters are either 4 paragraphs long or 5. That's the options. So I'm going to show you, after I talk about this slide, I'm going to show you a sample cover letter and explain the 4 paragraphs versus the 5. So you want to make sure that your cover letter matches the font style of your resume, and it should also follow suit with your references sheet. So when you come up with 3 professional references that you're going to use for employment purposes, you want to make sure that if you're using Arial for your resume, your cover letter is Arial and your 3 references sheet is all Arial, okay? So I wanted to mention that. Always customize your cover letter to the job description. Cover letters actually feature how well you write, and it's sort of like an elevator speech. You don't want to repeat yourself for what the resume states. So one of the things that I always cross out, especially with current students, is they always say in the 2nd paragraph, I am a senior at Bridgewater State University majoring in management. And that's all on their resume. They don't have to say that sentence. So go right into telling the reader or the employer, what are your skills for this job description that you're seeking? So don't fluff it with information that the employer can easily see on the resume. So don't be redundant, okay? So you want to highlight in your 2nd or maybe 3rd paragraphs of your cover letter, your skills, your experiences. You want to tell a story that's brief, that has a beginning, middle, and end, so that they can imagine you in that role doing those skills and so forth. Always proofread your materials for spelling and grammatical errors. So everything has to be perfect and no typos. So have somebody else look at it if you aren't sure of doing it yourself. So here is our cheat sheet. This is actually in our cover letter handout that we give out on campus, but you can also get this as an alum off of our sitemap, and we can send you the link to this. But this is page 4 on our cover letter guide. So at the top, you never ever put your name at the top of your cover letter, because you're signing the letter. So you're not putting your name twice on your letter. So your signature is at the bottom. And what you're putting at the top is your full address, the date, and then 2 lines down is either the contact person's name and title, or if you're looking at a job online and they don't indicate a person, then you're writing it to whom it may concern, which has no contact person's name and title. So you're just simply starting with the name of the organization, the full address, city, state, zip, and then to whom it may concern. So it's either person and title or to whom it may concern. So this is a representation of a 4-paragraph cover letter. Every paragraph warrants a different set of information. So we have bolded the statement to tell the student or the alum what is needed in the paragraph. So paragraph 1 is state the position title and then explain how you learned about this opportunity. Employers want to know, did you go to their website? Did you find out about this through Handshake or through Indeed.com? Are you being referred by a professor to this position? So you do have to identify the source, and they do document and they collect that data. The second paragraph. So this paragraph is the biggest paragraph on your cover letter because it's all about you. You are selling yourself and your skills. Many students and alums will say to us, there's not enough room for me to talk about what I want to say. So I do want to bring a little bit of background about my training at Bridgewater. And then I want to talk about my first professional job out in the real world. And now I'm looking for my second professional job. So I really need more space. So if that's the case and you need to write more about yourself, paragraph 3 or section 3 will be a continuation of number 2. So paragraph 2 and 3 can be all about you. And then that section 3 about the employer now turns into paragraph 4. And the 5th paragraph becomes the final paragraph or the ending, where you just leave your phone number and your email address, and it's your closing paragraph. So I just want to mention that this is a representation of 4 paragraphs. Paragraph 2 and paragraph 3 are the most important. So you're selling yourself in paragraph 2. Paragraph 3 is doing your research on the employer. How do you do that? This is my recommendation. When you go to an employer's website, I want you to look for links. I want you to look for links to their most recent newsletter. You don't have to read their entire 3 or 4 page newsletter. Just read the front page. It usually will highlight a photograph, maybe of senior staff holding a plaque because they got some kind of national award and they're being presented the award in Times Square in New York City. And you want to identify and say that you want to congratulate company ABC for getting the prestigious national award on customer service and excellence. And then you can mention the date of when they received that award. Another thing that you can look at on a company's website is a link to an article that may be written by the Boston Business Journal or the Boston Globe about this unique company. So when you're reading that article, what is being said about the company? And you want to say, there are 3 reasons why I'm excited about applying to this job because of A, B, and C. And you may have gotten 2 out of the 3 items from that article. Does the website have a blog page? What are they blogging about? Is there a testimonial page? Are employees able to write about their experience working at the company? Are they all positive remarks and reviews? Are customers satisfied with the product? So when you read the reviews, you could actually say, I was really impressed to read all 52 reviews about this product and not one customer wrote anything negative. So I want to be part of a company that is growing and is well, seen, by customers. So anyway, so you have to do your homework with knowing why you want to work for that employer. And besides the testimonials and the reviews and the articles and the newsletter, don't tell the company how many employees they have. So because you're reading that off the front page of their website and you know that they're in 8 different countries, they know that. So you don't have to tell them that because you read it on their website. So you really want to dig a little bit deeper beneath the surface to find out what are people saying about this organization? Why is it good? Why is there no turnover? So for example, I'll use Boston Beer Company as an example. There is very low turnover at this company. The company president promotes the company on having a 50-50 work-life balance type of environment. They do a lot of volunteerism. Millions of dollars are donated to Boston Children's Hospital anonymously by this company. They don't want the president's name highlighted or else they won't donate anymore, they say. So everything is anonymous. So you want to, when you're looking at companies, you can even say, you know, I know someone within the organization that has been with you for over 20 years, and they have marveled over, you know, A, B, and C as to why they're remaining to work there, because it has an awesome balance and so forth. So you do have to talk about that paragraph. It doesn't have to be as big as your second paragraph. And then the last is the closing. So thank you for considering my application and candidacy. Here's my email address. Here's my cell phone number. I look forward to hearing from you. And that's the close. And then you're signing the bottom. And in closing, uploading your resume. And then here is a real cover letter. So with all the information, and you'll notice that paragraph 2 is the largest because this person is selling themselves and their skills and qualifications. And then paragraph 3 is an addition to their paragraph 2 because they need more space to write about themselves. So in addition, while studying social work at Bridgewater, and it goes on. The 4th paragraph now is about the employer. As I was researching your organization, I was impressed with a variety of programs that you provide. And you're welcome to read that short paragraph. The last paragraph, you're welcome to write that statement that says, I will call you in a week to verify that my materials were received. You have to make sure that you make a note that if you're telling the employer that and then you don't do it, they may think, this person didn't follow through. They never called me to verify the materials. So I don't know if you really want to put that in there, but if you do, you have to make a note and say, all right, I do have a name of the person. It's Melissa Stevens. So I do have a real person that I can call the company and ask to speak with Ms. Stevens, and I can just verify that she has my documents. I don't recommend that current students write that statement because they will forget. So I tell them, don't write that, don't write that. But you know, always leave your contact information. You can use your student email address. If you're a current student with alums, you're going to be using your Yahoo or Comcast or your Gmail account, and just thank them. So that is the sample cover letter with the breakdown. So it's not as intimidating as many people think. People think, how can I possibly write 5 paragraphs about myself? And that's not what it's about. The only thing about you is paragraph 2 and 3, writing about yourself. That's it. Paragraph 1 is about, what is the job title I'm applying for? How did I hear about the job? Paragraph 4, researching the organization. Why do you want to work there? What have you heard about the place? Is it a good place to work? And then the closing paragraph warrants a different set of information. So you only have to worry about paragraph 2, 3, and 4. So every cover letter should be really different for each job that you're applying to. So now that we've broken down the cover letter, I think it's easier to digest. And now it's not so intimidating to people because you're like, oh my God, every paragraph warrants a different set of information. So it's not just me talking about me. You're not. So thank you, Laurent.
All right. So now moving on, as we were working on this presentation, we had talked to employer partners about, what are some things that we should discuss? What are some of your tips and advice that need to get provided? So we were debating on where to put this, but sort of the next piece is talking about networking more widely. And a lot of times people think networking gives them the hives or chills or something. People don't want to do it, but try to remind people networking is just talking to others, learning from others, getting information, and building connections that you can use down the line. And especially in this market, and for many of you that might be considering career changes or maybe looking at new upgrades into your organization, you're going to need some assistance in making that next move. So first and foremost, it should come to no surprise that every employer recommends utilizing LinkedIn. So for those that don't already have a LinkedIn account, you should definitely set up your free LinkedIn account to highlight your information. The benefit of LinkedIn is you can include a lot of materials that maybe don't fit onto your resume. You can use it as a free portfolio with work samples and things of that nature. But it's important to build that as one of the first steps with your digital presence that's out there. As many employers, especially as you get to the interview stage, will be looking you up. You know, it's just natural. You're probably looking people up before you go on an interview or before you meet somebody for the first time. Look up, check your digital presence. Make sure you lock down your profile settings for your personal social media and use LinkedIn as the source that you can direct them to for the types of information that you want them to see. Now, entry-level recruiting, you know, organizations may not use LinkedIn heavily to find candidates, but for mid to upper level positions and especially hard to fill roles, a lot of organizations will pay for the premium account to be able to do searches and to do directed outreach. So we encourage you to utilize that. But using LinkedIn and networking can be important even if you're stuck. You know, there might be some people on the call today who are sitting here, I don't know what I want to do, or I've been in this field and now I don't know what that next step is. Well, besides, you know, assessment resources and other pieces that we'll point out on our website towards the end of the presentation, it's going to be talking to people in those industries you're considering, getting an idea, asking questions, trying it out by maybe trying to shadow the professional. And that you can find utilizing the BSU Alumni group. So there's a formal networking group that you can utilize, but also if you go to the Bridgewater State University official page on LinkedIn, you'll see a tab that says Alumni. And that's an aggregator of any alumni who has a LinkedIn account and properly mention that they're a BSU alum on there. And it allows you to do searches based on location, industry, employers, majors. So you can use that to help you not only maybe look at options that are there if you're trying to figure out that next step, or to help find professionals to connect with. Because you'll want to start building up those contacts in the industry, especially if it's a new one. You need people to talk to. You need people who can refer you in the right direction, give you advice on how to move yourself forward. So that's a very strong tool to utilize. And I'm skipping down, but you can get referrals from there too. You know, we don't have alumni everywhere, but I guarantee if you look at and you start connecting with a professional, an alum off of LinkedIn, they probably have hundreds of connections of their own that you can take a look through if they have that publicly accessible. And if you had a great conversation, just politely ask for a referral to 1 to 2 people at maybe an organization or role that you haven't been able to find that contact with yet, so that you can slowly start to spider out those connections. Now across digital media, so depending on what you're utilizing, you know, if you're in a graphic design, art industry, computer science, things like that, you may have more of your digital presence, social media available. But make sure that you have that consistent look to it, that it's professional, that what you're sharing and the content that's available, that, you know, potential employers and alums that you're speaking with, that it's all appropriate things that you want them to see. Having an elevator speech. This is going to come important in multiple phases, both, you know, networking conversations, networking events, job fairs, interviews. You need to have your 1-minute elevator speech where your marketing presentation, where you're introducing yourself, you know, 2 to 3 reasons why you're interested in the role and what brought you to that particular company. I tell many candidates, kind of referring back to what John was talking about, the cover letter. Your elevator speech, oftentimes, if you already wrote out a cover letter, you've got the rough draft of your elevator speech already pulled together. You just need to go in and fine tune it and do the practice so that you're ready for meeting somebody on Zoom who says, oh, tell me a little bit about yourself. Having that elevator speech ready. It's usually one of the first questions in an interview. So it's important to pull that together. Now, when thinking about networking in professional context here and what we're talking about, oftentimes I speak with a lot of people who say, yeah, I reached out to so-and-so and asked them about a job or said, could they help me get me hired? That's not what we're doing with networking. Networking is first about starting a conversation. And we always suggest starting with informational interviews. The idea is that you're reaching out to professionals saying, I came across your profile and I'm really considering a move into, you know, the marketing field or something. What you're doing is really interesting. I'd love to set up a time to chat with you over the phone to ask you some questions about the work you do. People love to talk about themselves, and that's a great way to start the conversation. Then let them say, hey, I can get your resume to the right person, or I know about this great opportunity or a friend that can help you out with this. Let them do that initial offer so that it's not seeming like you're just asking for something. You're having a conversation, and maybe it's something that you can help them out with both now and the future. And making sure that is reciprocal. So they might be in the same position a year later, and you need to be ready to kind of pay that back to assist them with maybe making some connections there. So use that to expand the reach. And I think a big important part is that, you might be going out there and thinking of a lot of different fields. So you might have found like 30 people you want to reach out to, and you're sending out messages, trying to find time to talk. You don't want to fall behind. If somebody says, hey, I'm going to share your resume with my contact at such and such company, you don't want to let that go by for more than 2 to 3 business days. You need to be on top of your follow-up and contacts. So I always say, as part of your networking and job search, you should have something like an Excel spreadsheet, maybe a tab with all the people you're reaching out to, the date, and any follow-ups, so that periodically every day in your job search or in your networking outreach, you go through there to make sure you're up to date and that you don't fall behind. Or if there's somebody you talked to months ago, follow-up's also very important, making sure you keep your network alive. So I've seen some people that just do like New Year's messages to everybody on their LinkedIn group, or make sure when it pops up birthday announcements that you send a little quick note, or changes in jobs or things, just little things to keep that network active as you build it, because maybe use it now just to get some advice to figure out what you want to do, but maybe 6 months from now, you'll be ready to look at actual positions, and you don't want them to forget who you are, or felt like, you had that one meeting and you never stayed in touch with them. So make sure you follow up. And of course, thank yous. Anytime anybody is sharing their time with you, informational interview, networking event, interviews, make sure that you always send a personalized thank you. And it could definitely be an email, especially if all your meetings have been Zoom or things. But I often recommend, if you can and you have the time and the person's working in their office, a handwritten note is always great, especially after an interview there. But again, going through your digital presence, making sure LinkedIn is a primary mode that you're utilizing for that, and just making sure that, again, profile settings are locked down for your personal Instagram account, whatever have you, so that when an employer is doing a search, they're not finding anything that's readily available until they come across your LinkedIn account, that you can curate the content to what you want them to see. Now, this kind of goes in hand when thinking about the job search. Oftentimes when I'm talking to individuals that come in the office, they'll say, you know what, I applied to 50 jobs, I haven't heard anything. Well, then one of my next questions would be like, okay, well, what did you do before that? What was kind of the reasons you picked that? And they might just say, oh, I saw something on Indeed. Well, that's just one step of the process. And I actually consider that your application on an online board, that's really the last thing you're doing. To me, that's like the paperwork. You have to, unfortunately, go online. You can't, no company's generally going to consider you unless you're in their applicant tracking system. So that's one of the last things you do. But backtracking, what I want everybody to think about first and foremost is, do you know what you want to do? Because oftentimes when I talk to individuals, it's oh, well, I'm open to anything, or, I've got a degree, but, I'll take any opening. I want to be flexible. Flexibility is great and key, but that's going to make your job search take 10 times longer. You really want to try to focus down to your primary and maybe a backup goal or two of what you're looking at. But you do want to think about, what is the kind of work you want to do? What are the companies you want to work for? The environment you want to work in? So you really need to start by thinking about that first. And again, off of our website, we have our Focus Online Career Assessment tool that you can utilize to kind of force yourself to think about your top skills, the experiences, what you like to do, just to kind of start to get a sense for that. And one of those, when you're looking at those occupations, and just you can start to get an idea of what environment you want to like and the ones that you feel best in. And that goes to where you want to work. So you really want to think, am I a person who likes to work outdoor, work with people? Is the cubicle a nightmare for me? Or do I like that independent kind of work? think about that environment. I mean, no, first job in a new field is going to be your ideal. Or if those of you on here are getting your first professional position, that first one isn't going to have every single component, but you want to overall make sure that what you're selecting is going to be a good fit, because you are dedicating a period of your life and time there. You don't have to stay there forever, but minimally you should be looking at 1 to 2 years at a place so that your resume doesn't start to look choppy with too many jumps in your career. So after you've started to think about those factors and what you're interested in, you can go back to using tools like Indeed, Handshake, LinkedIn, whatever, to get an idea of what's the audience out there. So if I'm targeting financial services firms in the greater Boston area, start to think about what that list is and start to build your target list of employers. And that'll go through seeing who is hiring, or you might see some past closed positions, but there's a chance that those may come again. So instead of being so worried right off the bat about that exact role that's there, focus in on the organizations that you want to work at. Build that target list of employers. So again, get out that Excel spreadsheet, make that list. You parse through, you probably do a little online research just to verify that you like the company, make sure there's nothing that you missed, or you might talk to friends or family members and say, oh no, not a great place to work, focus on this instead. Parse out the list a little bit that way. But then this is when networking and back to the alumni database comes into play, because your next step in the job search should be taking that organization where there's good opportunities available and starting to try to get your foot in the door. So that's when I would say go into the LinkedIn alumni board, search that company and see who we have for BSU alumni that are working at that particular organization. If it's in that exact role you're looking for, great. Or you find the hiring manager or something like that, even better. But even if it's, you've been out of school for 15 years and you find a candidate who just started working there 6 months ago, that's still somebody helpful to talk to, because they just went through the hiring process for a role. They can tell you what was on their resume, how many steps it took in the interview, questions that were asked. They can still provide you with helpful information. And obviously you want to try and find somebody who's in that role or who's in a hiring position, because they would probably be most likely to be able to hand your resume off to the right person or offer to do that. But your goal is to try and get some of that information. Of course, shake the family friend tree, check your personal social media, look and see if there's anybody I mean, I still have candidates who'll come and say, yeah, my friend's mom introduced me to somebody. I mean, it does happen. Networking's still that. It's talking to anybody, it's building connections. So I don't care if it's your neighbor's son, whatever, that's the place to kind of go to start, because those people are going to be the most invested in you and trying to help get your foot in the door. But then fellow bears are going to be that next level of really going to want to help get you in there. They want more bears working at the company as well. So they're going to try and help educate you on the process. And those will be informational interviews where, again, you're learning information. You're finding out about the company, maybe what to put on your resume, how to structure your documents, what they like on cover letters, interview questions. That's all stuff you're learning. So even if they're that entry-level candidate that can't, get your resume to the hiring manager, you're still learning useful information that should help increase your likelihood of getting into an interview. So you take that information to adapt your approach. So you say, all right, this is what I've been doing on my resume, but that's wrong for State Street. It might have worked for Fidelity, but State Street wants something else a little bit different maybe. So you adapt that approach to increase that likelihood of that response. Or again, maybe they say, talk to this next person. So before you apply online, you have a chat with that HR manager who says, great, just sign up online and we'll schedule a Zoom meeting or something. It may go that well, or it may still be that you have to apply online. But again, use that as the end point. That's just the paperwork. You're just submitting your resume materials after you've already learned everything about the organization, you've adapted your approach and documents, and you're more ready to go. I won't sugarcoat, that's more time intensive, but we're looking more for quality over quantity, because you could be applying to 50 jobs and a 10% yield if you don't do anything else, like you just throw the dart at the board, you're just applying on a database. Hearing back from 5 of those would probably be a good yield for that 50 applications. Versus if you're sitting there doing this extra additional work, we're just increasing that percentage threshold. And if you get somebody who can share your resume with a hiring manager, you're probably at like a 50-50 shot then, because an internal referral is usually always going to at least trigger a review of the document. You know, I can't guarantee that's going to get you the interview, but it's going to make it that much more likely of getting that first level conversation. So I just really want everybody to kind of think about their job search and flip it upside down. Again, use those search tools. Indeed, all of those are great. You need those in the process. We use that for research pieces. And while this process will take you more time, I guarantee that through your research process, you'll filter out places. So you won't waste time sending resumes to places you never want to work at. And by the time you get to the interview point, you'll know that you want to work there because you've already done so much research. You'll be pretty set to know that you'd want to accept an offer. So the time it takes in the front, you'll make up a little bit in the end of the process. And just a couple other quick tips when thinking about the job search, just like I was already saying with networking and everything, keep track. So keep an itemized spreadsheet of everything you're applying to with dates. And then if you get a follow-up, like you have an interview and they say, we'll let you know in 2 weeks. If you haven't heard anything by 3-ish weeks, you should be following up. You need to make sure you're staying on top of that, because if the job market is competitive and you're in a field where there's 300 applicants for one role, you can't let little things slide. You never know what that one little thing is that's going to set you apart. And maybe that polite follow-up email to show your interest is the thing that they say, hey, nobody else did that, so this is somebody that we might consider. I already talked about building professional image. That goes from your online digital approach, your attire and interviews, how you have carefully crafted email and outreach to individuals that's professional, making sure that you're making that image, especially if you've only just recently graduated or only been out a little bit. You want them to forget that you're a recent grad. You want them to think that you've been in the field for 20 years by the way that you're acting and presenting yourself. Keep up to date on trends and things. Obviously, right now in the market, you have to be very up to date on the news. Things are changing constantly. You know, stock market's going up and down. Certain industries are, you know, opening back up and closing down. You need to be very on track with what's happening with trends out there. And be aware that depending on, now we'll note this down here, 6 months or more for the job search. It can all depend. I mean, there's some people, if you're a heavy duty networker, you get out there, you make a great connection. Yeah, maybe you could get, you know, a position in a month or something like that. But it usually does take time to go through this. So don't get discouraged if it is taking you a little while. I mean, you could apply to something today, but it might be a month before it closes, 3 weeks before they even start first interviews. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with something about you, but just know the timetable. And keeping aware that it's cyclical. You know, summers and winter breaks and everything, just like schools are quiet and shut down, people are on vacation. Employers aren't doing as much hiring except for critical needs. So be aware that that'll be going through there. But if you know other people searching, share leads, build your network of individuals that will support you. Be open to all opportunities, alternatives. Again, you want to have a focused search, but you know, something crosses your desk, give it a shot. If you find something, maybe people told you it's not the greatest place to work at, but if you like the sound of it, give the interview a shot. Worst case scenario, you decline an offer, but maybe it's not a fit for a friend, but it's a great opportunity for you. And as needed, depending on your industry area, you may have to look at gaining other experiences. I mean, some companies, if they've got the ability to be super picky, you may have to get additional experience. You may have to temp, work part-time, volunteer, do other things to boost up your resume. Because if you want to get into marketing and you've only been working in retail doing nothing related to marketing, it's going to be difficult. But networking with alums can help you maybe find out about projects and opportunities and help get that foot in the door. Now, one of the last things we kind of wanted to bring up was, and this came up a lot with the employers we're talking through. So they gave us a lot of basic, you know, reminders about resume and cover letters, but I think what constantly comes up is people's struggles with interviews. So 2 items highlighted here, it's because it was on like every single employer's email back to me, was research the employer. And to John's point, not just the base level sort of things about the organization, really dig down to, and I'm looking down at my notes here as to what some of the employers were saying, but really get into asking carefully crafted questions about things that are happening in the organization. What are new products and services that you're really interested about? dig deeper into that, because almost everybody's going to say, what do you know about us? What attracted you to applying here? And you want really strong, powerful things to mention there, not just, oh, well, I know you make widgets or something like that. You need to be more specific. Practice common questions. We'll refer, we have our interviewing packet on our website. You don't have to prepare for everything, but look through, do some practice at home. Questions that are in line with skills in the job, you should be prepared for. If they mention leadership skills 20 times in the job posting, you should be prepared to talk about questions that, talk about a recent leadership situation. How are you as a leader in projects? You should be prepared for that. I already mentioned updating your elevator speech, but in the packet also talks about prepare for behavior-based interviewing questions. So those are most of the questions you will get. The things that are, tell me about a recent, give me an example of. Those are behavior-based questions asking you to recall what you did in the past to get an idea of how you might work on the job. And in the packet, it mentions the STAR method, state the situation, the tasks involved, the actions taken, the results, the deliverables, what you learned from the situation. It goes more in depth in the packet than we can cover today, but that acronym will help make sure that you address those questions appropriately in a timely manner. Definitely have, I forgot to underline this one, but prepare questions to ask. You need to have questions there. One thing you should always ask, what's the timetable? What are the next steps? Do I need to do anything else? If they didn't bring it up, you need to know that, so what your next steps are going to be. But they should be really in-depth questions. Don't just ask, you can ask a day in the life of, but be better to say, I was researching on your LinkedIn profile. I saw that you've been working in the company for the past 10, or 15 years. So, what's, made you really excited to work for the company? What's made you want to stay? What about the environment? Or I saw you just started with this, Rob, I saw you just started with this new research team at Deloitte. So what made you, kind of make that switch from your previous job? What's really exciting about this work? That's the more in-depth stuff where you get to learn not only about the person and the company, but shows that you're really interested. Have your materials ready. So whether in person or virtual, have your resume, cover letter, anything you send to them, have that ready to go. Phone and video interviews. So we're all in this right now. So you need to make sure that phone video interviews, quiet location. If you're on video, you've got a neutral background or use one of the virtual backgrounds. Test the software, make sure everything's working. I know it sounds simple, but employers constantly are emailing us, say, tell your students, tell your students. So same thing for our alums, make sure you're checking that. Dress professionally, it's still expected. So even a video call, don't be one of the mistakes like on the news where somebody's got the bottom half not dressed or something and the top half looks good. You should be fully dressed in your professional attire. And we still recommend suits where appropriate. If you don't have that or anything, as close to, full professional attire as possible. Punctuality, in person, you should be showing up, checking in 15 minutes before. Zoom meetings, typically about, 3 to 5 minutes in advance, you want to be checking into the room. Usually they'll have a waiting room like we had today, so you don't have to worry about bouncing into somebody else's call, but it shows that you're going to be on time. Work on verbal and nonverbal skills, making sure that you're talking appropriately, loud enough, you can be heard, watching nonverbal cues, things you're doing. If you're doing like this, like I'm doing over and over again in the middle of an interview, gesticulating, you need to kind of catch that on there. And that's something that could get worked out in a practice interview or things like that, and doing some recording on Zoom or something from home and playing that back to watch. Send customized thank yous. So again, not just a generic thank you, but something that's referencing the conversation you had. Next steps in the process, your interest in the organization. Make sure you do that. That's your follow-up. And if you don't get an offer, see if they're willing to provide feedback. They can't always legally do that, but it's always worth an ask to see if they can give you a couple nuggets of information that tell you something that, maybe bomb the interview, or they can tell you a few things to work on, or they say, you know what, you're great, but you're missing these 5 skill sets that are critical for this role. It saves you from going and applying to 12 other places that are going to tell you that, and then you can start to see what you might be able to do to fix that particular information. And another 2 notes that came up from employers: show passion and high energy. Don't just go on, you may be tired of something, but you got to flip that light switch on when you get in the interview. You got to be excited, enthusiastic, animated, show that you've researched, that you're strongly interested in the field and company. Even if it's your last choice on the list, you got to make them think that this is the only place you've ever wanted to work in your life. So make sure you show that and come across, you get the offer, and then you can decide, is it a place that you want to work? And you can always politely decline. You can take some time to think about it, but can always politely decline. And of course, have references. And what was noted is oftentimes employers are calling references that people put down that individuals never confirmed. So just because they were a reference 5 years ago on a job doesn't mean you can provide them now. So get in touch, provide an updated resume to that person, make sure they're going to be a positive reference for you and not just say, yeah, they worked here. Make sure there's somebody who can really actionably sell yourself for the opportunity. So I know we talked about a lot. We were trying to figure out some of the big things that are coming up, stuff that employers mentioned, and trying to do 5-hour workshops into one presentation. So there's going to be a lot that'll probably come up, and we'll get to questions in a second. But as John mentioned, here's our contact information. You know, alumni are always eligible to schedule appointments with the career counselors in our office. And I will have you make note listed here of our website. If you go off the Bridgewater homepage, you can find us in the BSU work section, but also this URL will bring you right to the alumni services page. That will have all of our packets on resume writing, cover letters, all of that there, our focus assessment, lots of other resources, as well as a link to our upcoming events. As John mentioned, we have 4 virtual career fairs this fall that alumni can all participate in. First one, accounting, finance, and business. Then next month we move into CJ and government, and then humanities and STEM. So there'll be a variety of events that alumni can take participation in. So I think then we are probably set now to Rob as we kind of get into the question period to see if we have any questions.
All right, yeah, we've had a stream of questions. There's actually been a pretty cool conversation going on in the chat while you're going. This was fantastic, by the way. And I'll try not to talk about myself too much, but having gone through the process, there's a ton of things in here that were, you know, either things I had thought of, or I mean, lots of stuff I hadn't even thought of. So this is incredibly helpful. I'm going to start kind of going through the questions that were in the chat and anything that kind of came to my mind as you were both talking. And then just a reminder for everybody, if you need to drop off, we're recording, so you can come back and check out the Q&A later on. And please feel free to keep adding your questions to the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that as well. So the first thing I want to ask about is, so John, you'd mentioned avoiding templates in your resume. There's a few questions about resume that came up. Is there any benefit to having something that, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to say that's like different or unique, but like something that really pops or stands out. Like maybe there's certain fields where there would be a benefit to having a really unique resume. Or is the goal here to kind of make sure the focus stays on, you know, the content and less so on like how pretty or not your resume is?
That's a very good question. And my reference to the template, I have seen some really cool templates. And although we don't advocate for templates, sometimes when a student comes by, and they could be graphic design, they could be an art major, and they have a template that really looks extremely professional. It may have a pie chart or some kind of a graphic with data that's listed about themselves. So, or they could be computer science as well. So when I've seen these templates, I let the student know that, okay, this is actually a very unique resume that really does stand out. You do not need your photograph on it. So I do recommend you remove it. You can put your photograph if you want on LinkedIn, but it's okay to have your initials that are in a circle, but the other circle with your photo, that has got to go. Only if you're applying for jobs overseas where they need to see a picture of you and ask information about your marital status. That's only if you're going abroad. So with templates, though, they are restrictive. There's not a lot of space to write content. So that is what students say, you know what, I'm frustrated with my resume. And I'm like, because you can't add anything more to it. There's only so much space for this particular header, and that's it. So then when I say to them, why don't you just type it over as a Word document? And then they kind of feel relieved. that they have that freedom to like have and use the space themselves versus someone has already dictated, this is the space you have, it's limited.
And just say onto that and just know the audience, because graphic design and everything like that, yes, definitely you can go and use some different versions, but you can still make it yourself and still recommend that, because the other part with templates is they add things, columns, charts, tables, things in the background that are very difficult to remove and move around. So they do become a problem, but still know the audience, because if you're applying for a graphic design position at like, I'll just stereotypically use like financial services or insurance, that's a little different than if you're applying to a marketing agency. So you want something that's probably still a little graphic and visual, but probably not, the giant photo in the background with all this other information and lots of colors and things. It's all about, not only writing to the audience in terms of content, but knowing visually what that audience would kind of be, and thinking about what are more conservative industries and what are going to be some of the more creative, startup companies and things like that. That'll be a little bit more open to those designs.
That's great advice. And it kind of brings me into the next thing I was going to ask as well. So part of this, I mean, that's helpful in terms of like thinking about how you format and what your message is and what you're highlighting, is being very kind of specific to the role, right? So do you have any tips for making this more efficient? This is something I struggled with, is you apply to lots and lots and lots of places. Some of them are pretty similar and you can use the same kind of resume, but in some cases they're asking like specific experience and things like that. Any advice for like where you can kind of save your effort and energy on your resume and where you should focus that kind of customization?
Yeah, I would say that you want to have, depending on what your target is, if you have like, more than one industry or type of role that you're looking at, you should have, a main template that's for each of those. And I would say if you have one that you've already started out with the main resume, do not delete that or anything. I recommend that people actually make almost like a word bank resume, where everything you write new in a updated resume, you copy and paste over to there. So in theory, over time, your resume may only have, like 6 or 7 bullet points that you can fit in there for a particular role, but in your word bank resume, you could have, like 22 bullet points that you pulled together, so that in theory, you can cut and paste over. And then you have kind of like your mother version, your marketing research and your marketing analyst one, but then maybe you're trying to break into, I don't know, copy editing or something. So maybe that's a little bit different. So if you have those couple of different ones that, you're pulling through, making those the first time, and then those can then become the word bank for that sort of industry, so that then you just open a new Word document, you cut and paste the items that are over there. Now be careful about going through and editing, making sure nothing got out of alignment or anything, but if you're cutting and pasting into the same template, it should all, I shouldn't say template, the same document, it should all pretty much stay formatted together. So it should just be some minimal updates and effort that you need to make. So it's difficult, it is time consuming, but it's the only way to get attention in the market. Sending out the generic resume just is not going to catch it. And especially the cover letter, generic cover letter is almost a detriment to you, because if a hiring manager is looking through a pile of 50 of those, they can spot that stuff a mile away. They can tell what's not focused to them. So you've turned what should be a bonus point to give you more space to market yourself, then you're turning yourself into a negative point where you're probably going to start losing points and make it harder to even get an interview.
That's brilliant. Now I have homework. I got to create the mother resume. So Ashley Laycock just asked, how far back should you be listing your employers? She gave the example of having a job right after college that she worked at for a couple of years, but then she's been an employer for a long time. So if she left that job that she's been at for a long time, it's either you just list that job, or do you go back and say, well, I also did this, but it was a long time ago. Any kind of rules of thumb there?
I would suggest that the 4 most important things that you need to include if you are listing past history is the name of the company, the city and state, the dates of employment, and your title. That's all that you need. So if you've had 6 previous jobs, you don't have to bullet, you don't have to explain. Maybe the title says it all, that if you're a banker, You don't have to describe it. However, for current students, for example, we do not encourage current students to go back to high school for their jobs. If employers want to know about the here and now, they want to know, how have you developed and grown from freshman year to present? And then once you become an alum, when you're out, it's up to each individual whether they want to list something that is in their eyes old. But like I said, the four most important things that I previously mentioned could suffice. And you might want, you might want to showcase, I was there for 10 solid years. That shows my loyalty, commitment to one employer, and I want to showcase that. I don't have to describe the duties or my accomplishments.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would say is that you might have a version, if you've got lots of experience, but it's not all industry relevant, you might consider a one-page resume that's just related experience, where you only highlight those primary pieces. And if you put that header, then it denotes to an employer that you're not including everything, and there's obviously more work history. And let's be honest, most applicant tracking systems now make you type in every job you've had for the past at least 10 to 15 years. So they probably already have that detailed history. So if you have experience that's relevant, you might want to just go with the related experience and only highlight it there. And the most recent and relevant, give the most space to. And then as you work farther back and less relevant, you cut back on the amount of description that you put in there along the way.
That's perfect, and great timing, because we've had a few questions come in about relevancy, basically, like if something's not relevant, where do you put it? So that's really helpful as well. I also want to ask about, so for anybody who hasn't tried to apply to a federal government job, if you do, brace yourself, because they have their own entire process. I personally stopped applying because it was so much work. It's an incredible amount of work. So can you talk a bit about how you think about that process? And just briefly, so we don't have to go through the whole thing. They basically are looking for you to list how many hours essentially you've spent on every task that's relevant to that role. So how do you approach that kind of process?
I would say check. They always tend to have a schedule of webinars on resume writings and things. So if you go to you just Google, Federal Human Resources, they'll usually have a list of different webinars that are out there. I forget the website it's off of, but they'll host webinars periodically. They'll have the most updated information on what to look for. But basically, a federal resume, you don't leave anything off, and you include information that you don't normally have. Hours per week. Sometimes they want salary. Who was your employer? What was the physical day of the week? So not just month and year, but July 1st, 2007, you started at this job. So you need to do a lot of preparation in advance of applying there. And they have a step-by-step kind of little resume wizard that you can use. And they highly recommend you do that instead of just uploading one. The wizard just walks you through, and almost kind of like creating a LinkedIn profile. You plug in the information and you can't move forward unless you put in required fields. So it has that, but I strongly recommend that candidates look up one of the next, webinars that they might be hosting, because there's just so many intricacies. I mean, you could have a 3-hour webinar just on how to apply to a federal job, but yeah, it can be great opportunities, but you need to be ready for that timetable, and it's not going to be 3 to 6 months. It could take 6 months to a year for federal employment. Unfortunately, the government does not work speedily in many areas. So,
and I would and I just want to give a shout out to somebody that's in the audience, an alum, Matt Hunter has joined us. And Matt, it's nice to see your name and to see you. I know that you applied through the federal application process. You've done that. You've created a resume that reflects how they want your resume to be represented. And it's much different than the sample resume that we showed everybody today. So I just want to give a shout out to Matt Hunter, because he has been through the grueling process and he knows what advice he would give to any fellow Bears.
I'll also say thank you for joining Matt Hunter as well, because he's been very active in the chat and thrown out some really good advice and some experience. And I'm gonna ask another question that he asked as well. So in terms of alums or students with disabilities, so he mentioned a firm that specifically worked in this space of kind of connecting folks with disabilities with employers. So in terms of your office, how does your office help can make those connections for students or alums with disabilities? Because the process can be different. And then also, obviously, once you're on the job, things are different. So there's obviously kind of different needs there.
Yep. I'll chime in and say, I realized that Matt had mentioned an organization named Bender, and
Yep.
I'm not quite familiar with them, but I will look them up. We actively work with an organization based out of UMass Medical in Worcester called Work Without Limits. It's WWL is the acronym, and they put on a fall conference for applicants with disabilities. And they work closely with all of the state public universities in Massachusetts. They have a job board. And we also, off of our website, have a disabilities page with all links to help anybody in that regard.
Yeah, I've been working with Massachusetts Rehab Commission counselors
Right.
too that will provide, one-on-one employment assistance and things like that. They also do some supplementary services, and try to help in terms of finding, occupations, helping with the questions around, accommodations and things like that, try to help, lead individuals through that particular process. So if people aren't already working with that organization, that's one. And anytime we find opportunities, Bender comes up, I think, John, they periodically will send out just like virtual events and things like they have. I think they're consulting. I think it's a paid organization, but they do have free events and things that will just periodically kind of like throw out on social media and stuff as well.
That's great. That's perfect. So I think I'm going to combine a couple of questions. I think these are the last ones around resumes, really specifically around resumes. So in terms of, you mentioned the skills section, or I guess any other section, if you're running out of space, can you move that skill section into the cover letter, or is that a real solid expectation that employers are going to want to look at that, and the absence of it would be suspicious? And then the other question, I'll let you answer both kind of at the same time. Formatting between kind of private sector business jobs versus in academia, educational jobs. Thoughts on the differences between those two.
With that skill section piece, it really would just depend on the industry. I mean, it's critical if we're talking something computer science, graphic arts, any of those industry communications, things like that, that's critical, and you're going to have to find space on the resume. You may have to make trims in other ways. I suppose, if it's, I don't know, an industry maybe in, almost everything needs different technology, language skills and stuff listed, but maybe, in like a counseling field or something, when you have certifications and licenses and things that you're listing, maybe skills aren't quite as critical and you could mention into the cover letter. But again, it's knowing the industry. And if that's something that's listed in the job description that they're bringing up, they may be using AI software that's scanning for certain keywords. And if it's not on your resume is not going to get looked at. So in a worst case scenario, if you're pulling it off the resume, make sure it's mentioned in bullet points. So in terms of work experience, mention specific software tools and programs and things that you're utilizing. Mention your language skills so that in some way, shape, or form, it'll get picked up either by human eyes or AI software to kind of pull through there.
Perfect. And then business versus education, formatting, overall, like purpose of the resume, is it used differently?
I don't know. Education just can tend to be a little longer at times. Academia is usually a little bit more flexible. So, a 2-page resume isn't uncommon. And if you're working on a CV, like John mentioned before, if you're trying to become, if you got your PhD or something like that, everything like that, and you've got your teaching CV, that could literally be 18 pages long because you don't take anything off of it. It stays on there forever. You add new sections. Everything you wrote, did is all listed on there. But for majority of people, the purpose is still the same. Organizations should still be same with most recent relevant stuff towards the front page, top, and everything. It's just maybe length and maybe some of the supplemental sections, like education might have licenses and certifications and things like that, whereas, business may have more like technical skills and language skills or something. But really, there's no huge dramatic differences. Otherwise, maybe the length and look slightly.
Right. And just regarding references, if you're applying to jobs in higher education, it's usually expected that you have 5 references. In the private sector, it's 3 references.
They want more and more and more in the education.
Yeah, basically.
More of everything. Okay, great. That's really helpful. So you mentioned a few different places and resources, Handshake, and then somebody mentioned Focus online. Are those links available through your website or?
Yep, that link that I've read on there right now, resources for alumni, all of those are right off of that hard link. So if you just jot that down, or again, if you're on the Bridgewater homepage, click on the BSU works drop down, and then you'll see career services there. That'll bring you to our general page, and the left-hand toolbar, there's a page that says alumni services, and you can find all those links, the packets, links on upcoming events, all that's listed off of there.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, I think I have one last question. I see Alexis coming to start playing the music to tell us to walk off and finish our acceptance speech here. But so I'm curious about how, like, in talking with employers, do you have any perception on how they view candidates who have had a very long stint in a particular role? We're talking 10 plus years, sometimes 20 years. Same firm, maybe almost the same role the whole time. And, in your conversations with employers, how do they tend to view candidates of that nature, or any advice you can give to those candidates to help them stand out and take advantage of that experience and, kind of spin it to their benefit as they're either changing roles or industries or any of those things?
I'll take a stab at it. If a candidate has been at a job for a very long time and really feels the need to make a change, they want to learn something new, and they don't feel that they're going to progress any further at their current employer, they have to first they need to announce that they're making a career change on their LinkedIn account. So I do recommend that on LinkedIn, on their profile or their summary, it's one and the same. They should actually mention that they're making a career change from this field to that field. And then they have to tell their story about their transferable skills. They have to be able to look at that job description for that new industry and not say, I don't have that experience, or I don't know that software. What they do have to say is, I am looking for that challenge. I want to be challenged to learn this new software. I actually went online and I started doing a self-tutorial on that software. And I know that in about a month's time or even less, I could come up to speed with the rest of your staff. So never going into the negative saying, I'm looking at the job description. No, I don't have that. No, I don't have that. Spin it into, I want the challenge. Just train me, develop me, and I'll be up to speed. So it's how you package yourself in making that change, because you have a lot of professional skills. It's telling that new employer, please take a chance on me.
But I will say, from the employer's part, they'll also see that longevity as a positive, because for most employers, it can take at least 1 to 2 years to get the return on investment of a new candidate. So the amount of time and training and everything that comes through, they like seeing longevity. That means you're not somebody who's job hopping. Not that, making a few changes earlier in your career is a real big deal. So don't worry about that. If you've moved to, a couple places, don't be worried about that. But that longevity works. I mean, when we talk to employers here, when they hire a recent grad and they say they worked 5 years at CBS or something, but they also did internship and everything, they look at that as being consistency, building up skill sets, and that. So that's still a bonus point to highlight. So don't be afraid on that. That's not a negative. You just have to spin in reasons why and show, because you were always still maybe constantly learning in that role, what you kept doing in there, that you love the work and the people in there. that's all still positive spins, because again, they don't want to lose you after 6 months or something like that. They want an employee that's going to retain for a good period of time, and showing that track history of retention is going to be a bonus point.
Mhm.
Terrific. All terrific advice. I wish we could talk for another 2 hours because everybody clearly is very interested, and you both have given just very clear, specific, tangible things that people can do. And I know next time, if in the future I will be leaving and going to another role, I'm not planning on that. Anybody who's listening in, I love my job. It's great. But if that time comes, I personally will be reaching out to you both directly and using all your resources. So thank you so much. This is great. And I'm going to turn it back over to Alexis for some closing remarks.
Well, this was amazing. I actually did have one thing that I wanted to add. Actually, I tried to text it to Rob, but I wasn't fast enough. I know that a lot of our alums are not, maybe fully up with like the current trends and stuff on LinkedIn. And I know that we talked about LinkedIn a lot today. And I just wanted to ask both John and Laurent, what is a good resource for learning more about LinkedIn and how to use that properly? Like even me myself, I feel like I have an outdated profile on there. Definitely could use some updating. I don't know, maybe this is another alumni workshop we need to do in the future, but if you have any tips on that.
Well, we did develop back in January of 2019. Was it 2019 or 2020? We have a LinkedIn cheat sheet, which actually sits on our sitemap with all of our guides. So if you are using the link to our career services page or to our website, where all of our guides are, there is a cheat sheet for LinkedIn. They can grab it.
I don't know, did it share over to that page on the screen?
I feel like that's amazing. So, because I just know that's a thing that a lot of alumni ask about.
The cheat sheet there.
Yeah, so that's great. Amazing. So there's so many resources out there on Career Services site. So for all of the alums on the call, make sure that you know that you can go out there. And if you can't find something, you can certainly ask any of us and we can direct you or send you the link to the right area.
Great.
So I think that I just would like to thank Rob always so much for facilitating another great question and answer session. We got so many great bits of information today, and to both John and Laurent for the informative presentation. There's many things that our alumni are looking for, and career help is always definitely one of them. And as a longtime colleague of both of these gentlemen, I can personally attest to the great work that they do, and that they are wonderful and super fun individuals. So don't be afraid, reach out to them. They're here to help. I would encourage everybody to reach out to our career services office at any time. And as our alumni office transitions back to more in-person events, I just wanted to let everybody know that we will be pivoting from a monthly Aluminar to an every other month format. We are thrilled to be able to keep this program and keep it up and running, and we're working hard to bring you more fun, informative, and dynamic virtual presentations in the future. And I feel like this one was great today. And our next Aluminar is tentatively scheduled for November 17th, 2021 at 12:30 p.m. Please watch our monthly newsletter and social media channels for information on topic and registration. I will say we do have an alumni LinkedIn page, so if anyone would like to follow that, please follow that as well. We're always working on what can go out there for content, but it is a good way to network with other alums. So I would encourage folks to join that. And as always, if you have any suggestions for topics or presenters for future Aluminars or any feedback at all regarding Aluminars, you can feel free to contact us at any time by emailing alumni@bridgew.edu. And on behalf of the entire Alumni and Development Office, I want to thank everyone for this great presentation today. I thank you for joining us, and I hope to welcome many of you home at Homecoming 2021 on October 23rd. We have lots of great events planned, and the registration is currently live, so you can register today at www.bridgew.edu/alumni. Thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.